And I think especially the social community is being very successful in educating at least the consumer about how they can reuse their identity. And of course you can think about privacy aspects and other things that could be better, but I think that's just part of the competition that can be around in the identity world. Everybody is able to choose his own identity, and they all have their own reasons for doing that. Today I want to talk with you about the business arguments for a relying party to accept identities, because I think that is really where we should focus on the coming year, to really educate relying parties why it's beneficial for them to accept open identities. And in my work I talk to a lot of relying parties. I do several projects. I'm working with the Dutch government to accept external identities. I work with insurance companies to accept consumer identities. And I do a lot of discussions about what are the business benefits for them. And I want to discuss with you. So it's the first presentation. The slides are giving you some background about the arguments I hear, and finalizing with questions and answers. It would be interesting to discuss this a little and to hear maybe some other arguments from your experience. So I'm mainly focusing on the business case for relying parties. I think the business case for identity providers is also challenging, but I think we can have a lot of other slides on that. From my personal experience, if identity providers are able to include identity services within their existing business, like telcos or banks offering payment services, or social providers offering social profiles, they can be really successful. Let me see. So when I talk to relying parties, most of the time I get this reaction. So why should we even touch our current, most widely accepted identity protocol, which is the username and password? Everybody has most of the time issued one to their customers. They have it in place. IT department is managing it, and most of the business people don't really care. So these are the arguments why they stick to this process. The people say, well, we have double-digit growth in e-commerce, so basically our password model is helping us with it, so we don't see a reason to change that. It is already in place, it is self-asserted, but we don't care, because most of the time the consumer is willing to put his right credentials, because otherwise he won't receive the package he orders with us. And as long as he pays, we don't really care. On the other hand, they say, well, we have a business case where we don't want to have additional hurdles for our customers. So we even provide a fast checkout where users don't register and they can just buy the goods and then check out. And mind you, every additional step we introduce in our checkout process for a large online retailer will cost them about 40K a day when they have additional steps or hurdles. The other reactions we get is that the key necklace problem of the consumer is not really their problem, because from a consumer perspective they understand that it is very difficult to manage 50, 100 or even more username and passwords. But from a business logic they say, well, if we offer them an extra to accept external identities, they will have 49 instead of 50, and they still have the problem. So why should we invest in being, well, maybe society responsible to introduce this? So it's not really their problem. And there's also no real customer demand when they ask their customers. So for the investments, they say if you want to talk about external identities, talk to our IT department, and they can discuss it with you. And on the other hand, the business budgets are most of the time allocated to projects that increase their revenue or save costs. So are there any business arguments to replace your own login system and accept external IDs? To give a few of those, I think it's good to give a little background about how relying parties make their business decisions and how and where to invest. So most of the time, relying parties have three key areas where they are willing to invest. So they want to increase their revenues, which is basically attract new customers, make sure their current customers stay, and sell additional products. They want to lower their costs, so they want to lower the cost of the order process, or they want to lower the cost of other distribution processes. And the third part of the business case is most of the time to decrease company risk or fulfill legislation. And I think the key to convince relying parties to invest in accepting external identities is to convince them that doing that contributes to one of these three elements. So now I want to share you a few business questions that would underlie the investment of external identities. So when you talk to the marketeers and the business people, you more and more hear that they want to provide services used over multiple channels. So they have a username and password now in place for their web channel, but they're really thinking about, okay, how can we offer the same experience on mobile, on iPads, or maybe even on television? And then suddenly the current password system isn't that handy anymore, because most of the password systems aren't developed to work well on these additional channels. So if somebody within the relying party is looking over how to provide services on their different channels, there might be a compelling use case for accepting external identities, or maybe investing in a protocol like OpenID Connect and offering it as an identity provider. I'm not sure if that's the case in your countries, but sometimes when I go to a mobile website of an online retailer and I want to buy stuff, I get the notification that I should register first on their website before being able to buy goods on their mobile, which I think makes sure that they don't sell a lot on the mobile store. So another argument, how can we recognize our customers, and especially our new customers, in a more easy way and increase conversion? And I think one of the most symbolic text for that is the click this link to verify. I talked to some of the relying parties, and they really lose a lot of customers or registrations by this activity. So of course they want to verify the email and make sure that that is really the email where customers can receive orders or additional information. But they also check how much conversion they lose, and in most cases it's approximately 14% of all registrations. Because it's an out-of-bound channel, people have to go from the website to their mailbox, they have to click the link, sometimes it's in the spam folders, so most of the time they just leave the process and go to a shop where they already register, or they're looking for alternatives. So if people are looking for additional arguments to increase conversion, accepting external identities can be a very good use case, because when you look at, for example, Google as an identity provider, they are able to hand over a verified email address directly, and then you don't have to verify that. Last few couple of years, online retailers and other online services really focused on attracting as much new customers as possible. So they left out all the account registration things and just did a quick checkout. What you now see more and more is that they come to an understanding that their loyal customers actually are representing most of their profits. So a lot of their loyal customers are, well, they're responsible for about 50 to 60% of their sales. So they now understand that they need to know their customers to understand which are the loyal ones and which aren't. So they want to understand better what the demographics are of these customers, where they are located, how much transactions they do, and provide them with additional information. And most of the time when a loyal customer comes, he probably doesn't have to do the password reset because he is a loyal customer who returns more often. And maybe it's even good to offer him an external identity to reuse, both related to the demographics to check in addition, and on the other hand, it is something he's already used to reuse. Of course, something else, how do we engage with our customers on social channels? So a lot of websites now want to interact with their customers within their Facebook channel, within Twitter, and they all see it as additional communication channels. So they need a way to create a link to these customers and their Facebook channel or Twitter channel. So accepting external identities, or at least understanding the protocols behind it, is very helpful to do this. An additional development you see at the moment is that a lot of online service providers work with cloud services, and they want to integrate that within their own service. But most of the time they find it very difficult to reuse their username and passwords and to offer a seamless use of cloud services. So one of the business case points here can be that if you want to really seamlessly integrate with cloud services, it might be very interesting to investigate the different protocols that are used and see whether you want to reuse and make your identity possible to log into the additional cloud services, or the other way about. Then some marketers come with the arguments that they want to open up their data. So, for example, they want to provide their status or their service offering on iGoogle type portals. So they want to create widgets, and then the user needs to allow this one time. And that is something you can do with the current identity protocols, and to provide user consent and to allow them to provide this information to third-party sites. Last but not least, of course, there's a lot of discussion about the password risks and being in the news because your password system isn't very well organized. From my experience, that's a very important argument, but it's also very important in addition to the other arguments I just mentioned, because although it's getting more and more in the news and more actively discussed, the marketeers in the end look at the revenues and the cost savings, and of course they want to reduce customer or company risks, but most of the time the compliance officers have a little, or at least a smaller voice in these decisions than the marketeers. So To help relying parties to create a successful business case on this, you could fill in several arguments I just mentioned. So if you want to attract new customers, it might be good to attract customers that don't need to register but can just tell who they are reusing identities and start buying additional products, have no email validation. You could reduce churn because you provide an easy login mechanism and people won't run away because they forgot their password they normally use once a year. And you could offer more online loyalty programs. Cost savings, well, you could have the single checkout. If it's an identity provider who also offers payment services, then it might be interesting to have a single checkout process where the identity provider is also the payment provider. And you could outsource your know your customer cost. So some of the relying parties need to have know your customer or fulfill know your customer regulations. And if the identity providers are handing over verified attributes about who the customer is and that would comply with your know your customer regulations, then that would really lower the costs. And of course, you might save on your internal operational password system because it's because you're outsourcing it to the external identity provider. And of course, the company risk, it's increasing the risk of data leakage, and maybe there's even legislation about offering two-factor authentication or additional privacy requirements. So that was basically to give you a little background about the decisions relying parties have. It's time, I think we have some time for questions, but I also have a question for you, and maybe you are willing to share some. You agree with some arguments, maybe you see other arguments. So what kind of argument do you see relying parties are looking for to accept external identities? Thank you. Anyone? Yes, please.
Some of which are consumer this is something that's enterprise delivered company that represents somebody else. How would you align funds
Did everybody understand the question? Yes. So the question is related to multi-factor authentication, and the question is how relying parties can make sure that it wants two-factor authentication and how they rely on that. I think when you look at the, and I think the other speakers will show something about it, so there's more presentations about how it can work, but in the protocols now there is a possibility to provide that information in the protocol. On the other hand, it will be related to the policies of the identity provider. So if the policy of the identity provider states something about two-factor authentication, then that could be a solution. You also see a trend towards more adaptive authentication, where you see different decisions on different transactions. So it's also a separation between certain transactions being a single factor and others being multi-factor, or validating where you're coming from, or whether the behavior you are doing is strange or not. Okay. Yes.
this can write my preference. I don't know the other for example, I everything on camera is written to I think certainly on what so we should do very
Yes. So the question is if we see any takeoff of accepting external identities and chance on that from an OpenID perspective. I think we are still working on the user experience of using your identity on our website. I think the account user is a good example of that, and there will be some samples of that. On the other hand, I think the model of bringing your own identity is getting more and more available on websites. Maybe it's not always really well thought about, but you see more and more Twitter, Facebook, or Google buttons on even online retail stores. And although I agree that most of the time that is only because everybody is doing it, or that it's, well, it's good to have Facebook on your login screen. I really think that the education is starting that consumers understand that they can bring their own identity. It's where they step out of the process, authenticate, and go back to the retailer. So I think from that perspective, there is an increase, but we still need a lot of work to convince rebuying parties to start accepting and also educating the consumer. Yes.
something called some people might consider to be very similar to the SAML authentication concept. In terms of the APR, authentication concept one of my favorites.
So, yes, please. So the authorization is a very good argument, and so what you're saying is that the payroll providers can act as an identity provider if it's the authorization that the consumer is able to use that content.
out of the way here.